Chandra from the NR Sports Show. This is episode 939. I'm joined by a really special guest. His name is Trevor Crowe. He's a former MLB outfielder. He played for the Cleveland Indians. Now they're called the Guardians. And he also played for the Houston Astros. And we're really looking forward to this interview. And Trevor, I just want to say thank you for joining the show today. It's truly an honor. And what a great player you were. I'm a big Yankee fan, so you got to play against us a lot. And how are you and your family doing today?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I want to start off with your childhood growing up, and obviously you were born in Portland, Oregon. And when did you get interested in playing baseball growing up? And who would you say your biggest role model in that was?
When I was young, like 7 or 8, my dad would take me to the batting cages. And then at my babysitter's house, I would always watch the Braves games on TV. And then I can't remember how old I was, but I heard Brian Sandberg signed for 1 year, $2 million. And we didn't grow up like poor, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so as a kid, I'm like, oh my gosh, you get to play this game and make $2 million a year if you're one of the best. Like, this is amazing. And literally since 8, 10 years old, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to become a Major League Baseball player. But to answer your other question about who I looked up to, because I watched the Braves so much, David Justice was always my favorite player growing up.
Yeah.
In fact, one Halloween, I was like asking my parents, like, how can I be black? David Justice is black. Like, what can we do, to make me more look like him in my Halloween costume?
Wow.
And then as I got older, I really liked, watching Derek Jeter just because the way he handles himself, and obviously, the success he had in the postseason.
Yeah. So for you, while growing up and when you started playing baseball, did you get, before choosing outfielder, did you get to play any other positions like pitching or infielder or whatever, catching? Did you get to?
I did. I actually, so I played shortstop in high school. But as you've probably seen with some of the infielders, like Jose Altuve had it a little bit, Chuck Knobloch had it really bad, Rick Ankiel had it as a pitcher. I had issues with throwing accuracy.
Oh, wow.
It would come and go, but I could always hit. So once I moved to a big Division I, college program, University of Arizona, obviously you can't have that, so they transitioned me to the outfield there.
Did you? I gotta ask you this: did you ever think to yourself maybe you could have been a two-way player like Shohei Ohtani?
No, never. What he's doing is like unbelievable.
Yeah, congrats to him, by the way, winning MVP. Yeah. So I want to ask you though, in high school, what did you learn? Obviously, in high school, obviously some players get a lot of advice. So for you, what did you learn as a high school player before going to college?
So I was really fortunate, right? I had a great high school coach in Jeff Scholl, but I also had a lot of really good mentors. One of those was Dave Roberts, not the manager of the Dodgers, the #1 pick out of the University of Oregon, who played for the Padres for a while. He was a catcher. And, I was concerned I wasn't big enough, right? In high school, I was 5'8", 5'9", 170 pounds. And the best piece of advice he gave me was, no one is going to look at you and say, we have to have Trevor Crowe because he's so big, right? They're going to say, we want him because he's fast, he's athletic, he hits the ball well, he gets on base, right? So he taught me to focus on the skills that I did have, right? I was never going to hit 50 home runs. But if I was a consistently good hitter and I continued to work on my speed and defense, then I could have that path to the major leagues. So I think that's one thing that really helped me, kind of refine my game in high school and then in college, and then obviously ascending towards the big leagues.
Yeah. So tell our fans, this is interesting. Actually, after your high school career, you entered the draft and you got drafted by the Oakland A's, but you didn't end up signing with them. You went to college, and take us through that process. And did you ever think maybe you could have signed with the A's, or were you thinking college right from the start?
No, I never wanted to go to college.
Okay.
I hated school. Now, looking back, as a 38-year-old, I will teach my kids the value of school and how important it is, right? Because baseball ends.
Yeah.
And you have to have something to do for a while, right? And education is never going to hurt that. But I did not want to go to college at all. I was set on signing out of high school that was my dream. And when the draft rolled around, and I got drafted as a senior, while I was happy, at the same time, I was also crushed because I knew it probably looked like I was going to go to school.
Right.
Oakland was maybe going to give me, a decent amount of money, more than the slot in that 20th round. But my college coach was like, "What are you doing? If you come to the University of Arizona, I will make you a first-round pick. Like, if you give me 3 years of your time, you're a first rounder." And he just sold me on it so much, like he just convinced me that that was going to happen.
Right.
So I put aside the disappointment of not going directly from high school into the minor leagues, and went to Arizona for 3 years.
Yeah. So before we get to your college career, I'm just curious. Obviously, some player, it takes a while, in baseball, especially when someone plays, or for example, play infield or and then transfers to the outfield. It takes a while to adjust. For you, how long did it take for you to adjust to the outfield, and what did you do to become that great outfielder that you were in the game?
That is a difficult transition. So I can run a little bit, and I was athletic. So really, it was just seeing the fly of the ball during the game, getting the reps in during BP. Working a lot on those live reps. Getting with the outfield coach as much as possible, and just really caring about your defense. And it wasn't super easy for me at first. I mean, it took a lot of work to go into it to refine my play out there.
Yeah, so tell our fans, what was it like playing for University of Arizona? Obviously, a great college program for football, baseball, obviously, and other sports there. And what was that like, the atmosphere in Arizona for you?
It was awesome. So when I went there, the program was struggling, right? And Coach Lopez sold me on, like, be part of the first class here that's going to get us back to prominence, right? And lucky enough, during my sophomore year, we went to the College World Series. My junior year, we lost in a regional, but we were, top 10 in the country. I think we had like 6 or 7 big leaguers off that team. It was awesome because that's the last, real time that I played baseball, and it was all about the team. Right. And that's not saying that at the major league level, it's not all about the team. It is. However, most of the guys in the big leagues that are not on teams like the Yankees or Houston, their number one focus is staying there every day.
Right.
And I felt that a lot throughout my career, is like, hey, I need to do well today so I can be back tomorrow. So, looking back on the college, I mean, it was just so great to have that goal. Everyone's working towards it. Obviously, guys want to get drafted and go on to the big leagues and stuff, but it was the last time I felt like, man, everyone is just focused like on this one goal.
Yeah. So for you, what was it like playing high level competition in college, and to help you get ready for the major league? Because obviously major league is high level, but for you, when you played against like this top college teams, what was that like for you competition wise?
I mean, very competitive, right? Like, if you're playing, at a big Division I school, and even, some of the smaller schools, they have very good players. The difference that separates, like a Pac-10 versus, a non-power conference isn't really that much. It's just a little bit of consistency. So I think that helped in 2 ways. Number one, right? Like, you play against better competition, you get better.
Yeah.
But the second thing is I went throughout the minor leagues and I saw guys who I'd played against, now playing against them in A-ball, AA, AAA, and seeing them ascend to the big leagues. It gives you that sense of feeling like, okay, I believe I'm their skill level. If they're having success, I can have success too at that level.
Yeah. So obviously after your college career, you got drafted by the Cleveland Indians in round 1, pick 14, and take us to that draft process. What was that like, and waiting for your name to be called? And once you got your name called by the Indians, what was the feeling like for you?
Yeah, it was crazy. So we had just got done playing a regional in Fullerton. Unfortunately, we lost. So, right, it was like super low. And we're at the airport, teammates are around, and my agent calls me. He's like, hey, I think Cleveland's going to take you right here. He was sitting in his office. I'm at the airport. He puts it on speaker. And I get to hear my name call, and it was a really cool moment. Obviously I've always wanted to play baseball. Like, my goal, what I would tell people, and they would think I was crazy, is like, I'm going to be a first round draft pick, I mean, it was to the point where like the first day I enrolled in college, like I circled on a calendar 3 years later, the date of the draft. Like I was hyper focused on putting all my energy and effort, into getting drafted. So, to have that happen there with all my teammates was, it was really cool.
Yeah, so obviously you got to spend time in the minor leagues, and after you got drafted, what was the first thing you did?
You mean like financially, or like where did I go? Or
Yeah, financially.
So I was buddies with do you know the name Delman Young? He played for the Devil Rays, came up from them. So I was buddies with him, and he had this sweet H2 Hummer. So I went out like maybe like a week after I got drafted, and I got an H2 Hummer.
Well, oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell our fans, what was the experience like learning in the minor leagues before you got that call up, and what did you learn as a minor league player to get better?
It's a grind, man. I mean, in college you're playing 3 days a week. Sometimes you have a midweek game and you got practice for a couple hours. People think like even playing in the game, it's like, all right, well, the game starts at 7 and you're done at 10. So you're out of there by 10:15. 3 hours a day, not bad. But what they don't see is, for that 7 o'clock game, you're at the ballpark at 1:30. It's like you have a full practice almost before the game. You play the game, maybe you work out that day, then you go do your stuff to recover. I mean, it is really and truly a grind that you have to like get in the flow of and appreciate in order to be successful at it.
Yeah, so obviously you made your debut in 09 against the Texas Rangers. So tell us about your call-up experience. Where were you that day? And once you got the call, and how relieved are you that you finally made your dream?
So in spring training, at the end of spring training, there were like 3 or 4 days left. And I had a great camp. I hit like 300. I was playing good defense. I was stealing bags. And I got called into the manager's office, and they're like, hey, we're going to send you down. Be ready. Don't know what's going to happen, but just keep doing what you're doing. And I'll always remember Eric Wedge being like, be ready, be ready, be ready. And I'm like, yeah, right, screw off. I did everything I could do. I was pissed, but obviously handle it professionally. So they give me like the rest of the day. I come back the very next day, and I'm playing in a AAA game, like a, spring training game. And I hit a ground ball, and I don't like run like 100%, but I'm like at like 90%. So our manager takes me out, and in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, is he taking me out because I didn't run hard? So after the game's over, Torey Lavello, who's now the manager of the Diamondbacks, I was like, hey, Wedge needs to see you tomorrow, first thing, because the major league team was on the road. So I'm like, okay. I get to the stadium early the next morning, and actually he wasn't in yet because we had a night game. Mark Shapiro was like, you made the team. David DeLucci's going on the DL. It was awesome. It was really incredible. Obviously, like called my parents, called everybody, that's significant in my life. It's that first like feeling of being told that like your dream's coming true, even if it's just for one day, is absolutely, amazing. And then to circle back to your question about Texas, I didn't know I was playing. It was the last game of the series, and our manager just came up and is like, hey, you're in there today, stud, go get him. So it was really cool.
Wow. Yeah, so once you walk into the clubhouse and you see a roster of Travis Hefner, Cliff Lee, Victor Martinez, Kelly Shoppick, Johnny Peralta, Ben Francisco, you have Chris Jimenez. You can go down the list. What was it like playing with those type of players?
It's awesome. Like to see guys, especially when you're in their minor leagues, that like, the Grady Sizemore, the Cliff Lees, the Victor Martinez's, like you kind of like feel like they're on just like a different level, right? And then you meet them and talk to them, and they make you feel comfortable, but it's still, for the first like year of being in the big leagues, and maybe this is just for me, I don't know, maybe some guys just slide in there, you're kind of getting used to everything, right? Like the media, the players, you're now playing with, other all-stars that you've heard of. And once the game happens, all that stuff kind of slows down. But on the day-to-day, when it's slow and you're just going through your day, you're still like absorbing it a little bit. But it's a cool process to go through.
Yeah. So speaking of Grady Sizemore, what was it like learning from him and being in the same outfield as him?
It was awesome. Grady unfortunately had a string of injuries.
Yeah.
But when that guy was healthy, man, he was so productive. He was so dynamic. I mean, you talk about see what contracts guys are getting these days. Who knows how much money he would have made? Very quiet. He kept to himself a lot, but whenever I would approach him asking for advice or ask for pointers on stuff, he was always very open and willing to help.
Yeah, and then speaking of the pitching staff, obviously the headliners Cliff Lee, Carl Pavano, David Huff, and all. And I want to speak about Cliff Lee because this guy, what a great pitcher he was, postseason pitcher, especially. He every time he played the Yankees, he pitched tough against him and against them. So what was it like playing behind him, knowing that every fifth day he's gonna win that game most likely?
It was awesome, man. Watching Cliff Lee get ready in the way he competed, I wish I had a little bit more of that in my approach too, because he was just so big on like, listen, I don't care what the hitter's strengths are. I don't care who I'm facing. I'm going to pitch to my strengths.
Yeah.
And if they beat me, they beat me. But I can live with the results if I'm pitching to my strengths. So just to see him go out there every fifth day was awesome. Obviously, he had a great career. And the guy he was really fearless. It seemed like the bigger the moment, the more he was able to gather himself, be calm, and just perform at a really high level, which is obviously what makes those guys great, right?
Yeah.
The bigger the moment, the better they perform.
So I'm just curious, for you guys, especially infielders and outfielders, when you have like a strikeout pitcher on the mound, if he's on that day and he has like, for example, like 15, 16 strikeouts, does it get boring for you guys not getting any balls in the outfield or infield?
I wouldn't say boring, right? Like mentally you have to keep checking in for sure. But the thing about like big league baseball is, it's the same thing, NFL, like one play that you're not ready for can really change a game. So you just always need to be plugged in. And that's part of the grind too, right? Because the games are so long, you might not have action for 3 or 4 innings, but you have to be ready because you never know what pitch is going to be.
Right. Yeah. So obviously you mentioned that you played underneath Eric Wedge, but it was only for 1 year, and then they transitioned to Manny Acta. So first, what did you learn from Eric Wedge? What was he like as a manager? And when obviously you played underneath Manny Acta also.
Wedge was awesome. Obviously, he knows a lot about the game. Very confident guy. Like you could tell he was confident in his ability to read the situation, plug in the right guys. He had a very distinct way of how his team wanted to play. Be aggressive, put the pressure on him, always attacking the other team. I think he had a good message, right? But being a young guy, I was a little, I don't want to say intimidated, but we didn't have like the closest relationship. He wasn't necessarily standoff, but you could definitely see like with the star players or guys who had managed longer, he was just tighter with, right? And that's human nature. I feel like we had a good relationship and I liked him as a manager. Manny was a little bit different. I feel like he tried to communicate a little bit more, tried to go out of his way to, be closer with the players, if that makes any sense. Different style. He had his own little flair to the game, but I think Manny was a great manager as well. I'm really grateful for the opportunity he gave me in 2010. I think I got like 400 plus at bats that year. They were both really good guys to play for.
Yeah, and also, what was it like playing in front of the fan base? Cleveland has a great fan base and a great ballpark too. And what was that like? The atmosphere like for you?
It was awesome. Jacobs Field, which now is Progressive Field, great ballpark. The fans are amazing. The people are very similar to where I grew up in Portland. Down to earth, low key, hardworking people. Obviously, they want a winner, which every fan base does. But it was a good place to play. Very good place to play.
Yeah. So obviously, I remember like one game of that I remember as a Yankee fan when Java was pitching on the mound and all those flies came in and That was a crazy game there. And but I want to ask you though, what would you say your best moment was as a Cleveland Indian?
Oh. I think the coolest thing that I ever experienced with the Indians in 2009, my rookie year, we opened up Yankee Stadium. CC Sabathia was pitching for the Yankees.
Yes.
Cliff Lee was pitching for us. I started that game.
Oh,
I went, I think 2 for 4 or 2 for 5. I had an RBI, a walk. We won the game. But what was super cool about it is I was playing catch with Tony Graffinino to warm up, do our sprints, which you see all the guys doing. And they started lining all the great living Yankees up. So we're like getting ready. And me and Tony are like, holy shit, Yogi Berra, Reggie Jackson. I mean, all these guys are coming out. And it was like surreal. First game at Yankee Stadium, all the stars are there. I mean, it was like such an experience.
wow. Yeah. So now transitioning from Cleveland to Houston, what was that transition like? How tough is it for you leaving the team that drafted you and had to go to another team?
Obviously, it's tough, right? Because you form relationships with all your buddies and stuff. But at the same time, it was great to go to a new organization because my career had run its course in Cleveland. I was a high draft pick. And to be honest, I didn't perform at that level once I got to the major leagues. And you feel those things in a major league clubhouse, right? Like, I think if I was like a 10th round pick and I performed like I did, that would have been a more acceptable performance. You kind of feel like more accepted because you're kind of the underdog. So when I went over to Houston, kind of like the expectations were off, and I had parts of 3 years in the big leagues,
Right.
which it was a very, very young team when I got there. So it went from like a younger guy to like a guy that actually had some time. And it was a totally different dynamic than what I was used to in Cleveland.
Yeah. So when you got to Houston, obviously you played with Jose Altuve. You got JD Martinez. And what was that like playing in Houston for you, and especially playing with Jose Altuve?
I mean, Houston was good. We lost a lot of games, but I'll tell you what, when I played there in 13, and then I went on a rehab assignment when I hurt my shoulder, being there in spring training, right? I got to see a lot of the guys that they had in the minor leagues, and they were absolutely loaded at the time. And I remember telling people when I came home that offseason, I'm like, Houston is going to be so good. George Springer's coming up. They have some good young arms coming up, like how good Altuve was. Correa was in camp with us that spring training. He was amazing for a 19-year-old kid. So I could see the progression. I think they would win a World Series, and as quickly as they did, no. But you could really, really see that the talent was there. There was no doubt about it. One thing that I haven't said publicly, not that anyone cares what I have to think, but I will like to get out since you asked me about Altuve. Not to bring up the whole sign stealing thing, but he is one of the best players and best human beings that I have been a teammate with. And the funny thing is, he got so much crap for the buzzer, knowing the pitches. He's one of those rare guys that doesn't like to know what's coming. So it was just like, it was comical to see people, getting on him for that. And at the same time, I felt bad for him because he was just getting absolutely crushed for a while.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, obviously on the field, off the field, he obviously a great player, great person. And forget about what happened there. It's just it's in the past. But for you, obviously you got to play with your buddy Rick Ankiel. What was that like, being teammates with him?
It was cool. It was really cool. Rick, obviously, veteran, ton of experience. I had never really interacted with somebody who suffered from that same like mental block, throwing condition, whatever you want to call it, that had ascended to the major leagues. Obviously, he transitioned from pitcher to outfield.
Yeah.
But it was cool to talk to him about that and get his perspective. And, he's just a good dude. He's a really good dude.
I had your by the way, you played underneath Bo Porter. We had him on the show last year, and it was an honor talking to him, and what a great person, and obviously a great manager. So what do you like about him as a manager, and what did he bring to the table?
I like Bo. I think he was a great communicator. I think he tried to put his players in the best position to succeed. And I really like the way that he thought. I think some guys at the big league level were kind of a little like, is this too high school? But he always pushed like a lot of, positive thinking and, holding yourself accountable. I remember going into spring training, he made us, not made us, but he recommended we read the book From Good to Great. And I really value that type of thinking. Like, what can you do to get yourself as prepared as possible, not only physically, but also mentally.
Right.
And I think that was really, really big for him. And I think you're seeing now too, the rest of the league is kind of coming into that, space as well.
Yeah, so obviously Astros there's another great fan base in Houston. The ballpark is amazing, and if you think about it, I compare the ballpark, especially in the NFL, you have the Seahawks stadium is tough to play in. In NBA, you got the TD Garden, which is tough to play in. What do you like about the Houston atmosphere? And it's a tough ballpark to play in.
Yeah, well, the fans are great there as well. What I loved about it is you would come in for a game and be 104 degrees outside, and it's like 73 with a dome. And like, it was so nice to play in the AC. You have no idea. It's a great ballpark.
All right. Speaking of weather, obviously coming from Cleveland in the cold, how long did it take you to adjust from the cold to the heat?
Not that long, because fortunately Cleveland summers get really hot, and I've lived in Arizona in the off season for since 2006, so it didn't take that long to get used to the heat.
Yeah. So tell our fans, what would you say your best moment was as a Houston Astro throughout your career?
We played the Twins. It was later in the year in September, and I hit a walk-off single. And it was really cool. It was my only walk-off of the big leagues.
Oh, wow.
And it was rather exciting.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this in the beginning. Also, you're Olympic gold medalist. So you got to play with the men's USA baseball team. What was that like in 2004? And what was that experience like being in the Olympics?
It was crazy. That was also one of my goals in college, right? I'd seen guys play for Team USA. I really wanted to be a part of that team, and I got the opportunity to do it right after coming out of the College World Series. Just the amount of talent we had on that team was like on another level. I mean, Troy Tulowitzki, Ryan Zimmerman, Jed Lowry, Travis Buck, Mike Pelfrey, Daniel Bard, Jeff Clement. I mean, we had so much talent on that field, and to see those guys, get to the big leagues, and have great careers up there. That was an amazing team to be a part of.
Do you
Alex Gordon.
who? Oh yeah. Do you miss the game?
I do. Initially when I got out of the game, I had other interests going on, and I had so many issues with injuries. I didn't perform the way I wanted to. I didn't want to go back to AAA, and I was like, I'm ready to be done. Looking back now, 8 years later, I miss the game a ton. I miss interacting with the guys. And my one regret is I wish when I went to spring training with Detroit in 2014, I was more mentally and physically ready to compete for a job there, for sure.
Is there a possible comeback for Trevor Crowe?
No. Not now. I work out these days. I'm sore for like 6 months. So, I had so many injuries throughout my career. Obviously I had the major ones like elbow surgery, shoulder surgery, but just the little stuff like your low back goes out, your oblique, and once that keeps happening and you got to manage it so much just to get on the field, it's a lot of work. Those guys that play 15, 20 years, it's really impressive.
Yeah, so obviously by watching the game now, what's it like been for you after your career, helping out other people and also watching the game from afar, from a different side, and seeing young talent come up, and then your former teammates still going at it like Ryan Zimmerman, Jose Altuve, and then you got Daniel Bard. What a great story there. He coming off that injury, and he was one of the best closers in the game last year.
Yeah, crazy comeback story for Daniel Bard. On a side note, I actually talked to him like a week ago. Mm-hmm. So I've been contacting teams trying to get back in baseball in some form or fashion, and he had a really cool job with the Diamondbacks as a player mentor, and I wanted to talk to him about that role and maybe how I could be a fit in it. But it's been cool to watch the game. I'll tell you this. The game has improved so much since my rookie year to where it is now. It's amazing. I remember my first year, like closers were like 96, 97. It's like, this guy's nasty.
Yeah.
Now you have guys you've never heard of coming out of the bullpen throwing 100 in the fifth inning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like how good the guys are, even like in the last 10 years, is silly, but it's still fun for me to watch the games. Sometimes you'll have that moment when you're like, wow, this is crazy. I used to do that. After you've been away from the game for a while, you forget. It's like it's a different world when you're playing at that level. You forget you were there sometimes.
Yeah, so you spoke in the beginning. You said you watched the Braves growing up, and what was that like seeing them win the World Series this year against the Astros? But the Braves had up and down seasons, and for them to be able to overcome that and win that World Series, what was that like seeing that?
It was cool. It was really cool. In fact, I was talking about the World Series with a couple buddies, and they were asking me, who do you think, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Houston gave me a great opportunity. My heart is with Houston, but my head's with Atlanta. They're hot right now. Their pitching, I thought, was better. And I just thought they were more suitable in a 7-game series, to win it. But even though Houston lost, obviously awesome Atlanta won. I remember their last championship in '95 when they had that amazing, starting pitching staff. Always been a Braves fan.
So this is a 3-1. Who is the toughest pitcher that you have to face throughout your career? Favorite outfielder to watch right now, and favorite ballpark to play in?
Ooh, okay. So when Francisco Liriano was with the Twins in 2009, before he got hurt, he was absolutely filthy. 95, 96, 97, crazy slider. He was one of the tougher at-bats in the league. Favorite outfielder to watch right now? God, there's so many good ones. I mean, Acuna, Trout, I know those are like easy ones, but those guys that can do it all right, play great defense, get on base, hit homers, steal bags. It's awesome to watch those guys. As far as stadiums, the new Yankee Stadium, amazing. But I really like Boston. The fans are just like right on top of you when you're playing in the outfield corners there. There's not a lot of foul ground. They rock. I mean, it's quite an atmosphere.
What are your thoughts on Houston Astros outfielder Cole Tucker?
Stud. Long time coming that he had the production he did this year. I really like what they did with him throughout his development, right? Like he came up when he was young. He got some time. They worked him in. They gave him some consistent at-bats. But they didn't like fire him right into the 3-hole. When he struggled, they didn't send him down immediately. Like when a guy's got talent, you stick with him. And I think that's what Houston did. Obviously, he started performing better over time. And when you do that, you're going to get more opportunities. But to watch him, turn into that household name and that continuing all-star, which I'll think he'll be, over the next 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years, depending on how long he stays healthy. It was cool to see that for sure.
Yeah, so now when you see the youth, it's all about helping out the youth now. And when you see the youth in football, basketball, baseball, soccer, whichever sport, what advice would you give to these young athletes that are coming up into the games?
A couple things. Like, number one, like, no matter how old you are, like, if your vision is to be in the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, right? Like, commit to that vision. Picture yourself doing that every single day, right? Now that alone doesn't get you there.
Yeah.
But that's a start of it, right? Next thing, what are your steps that you're going to take to get there? Whether it's work on my shooting, or I need to get faster, I need to work on my hitting, or, I need to get stronger, right? What are those little steps that you can take every single day? Because the thing is, the improvements in sports, especially the better you get, they're not huge, right? It's just like a small little step in front of the other, little step in front of the other. And sometimes it doesn't seem like you're going anywhere, right? So if you're in that position where you want to ascend to a professional sport, keep getting better every single day. And over time, when you look back a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, right? you will become closer to that goal. And the third thing I would say is, like, you have to believe in yourself, right? It doesn't matter what anyone else around you thinks. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody will. I was lucky, obviously, like, my mom believed in me. My dad definitely believed in me. I was lucky I had them as parents. But for the most part, like, nobody, when I said, "Hey, I'm gonna play Major League Baseball," nobody was like, "You're gonna do that." So I guess my message there is, be wary if you're a young athlete, your circle around you, and the negativity that they might bring towards that, and don't let it affect you, right? If you have that goal, stay focused, keep working, and that's going to give you the best shot to achieve your goal. And nobody knows at the end of the day if you're going to get there or not.
Yeah. So for you, what's it been like sharing your story now on these platforms, like on podcasts like this show and other podcasts you've been on before?
I haven't done a lot of it. This is the first podcast I've done. I enjoy talking to younger athletes who I feel were like me coming up, in the sense that, I didn't know really any professionals, but when I was around them, whether it be like a Ben Petrick or a Dave Roberts, it was always like, it made my month, right? So I still remember that when I was the 10-year-old. So I definitely enjoy interacting with, kids, high school guys, college guys who are trying to make it to that next level, and hopefully giving them a piece of information that, will impact their career positively. And I definitely want to get back into, talking about the game, talking about, life, what it takes to be successful at the highest levels.
See, yeah, like you mentioned to me earlier that you're trying to start a podcast, and that'd be awesome for you guys to start one. And I feel like you can bring a lot of insight to your show and to other people. And if you want to, if you bring on like athletes that want to come on the show, that'd be awesome for you guys.
Yeah, in fact, I hit JD Martinez up the other day about doing it. So I think
JD Martinez, nice.
I think his story about what happened with him in Houston.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, think about it. Like, you get released because they're not going to give you a job in the big leagues, and they're like, "Hey, we don't even really want you on like our AAA team, even though we can send you back. We're just going to release you." Like, how much that crushes your confidence, or a normal person it would. But instead, he came over to Detroit, which I was there in spring training in 2014. This guy had like the best, most positive mindset I've ever seen. There was no worry, no concern. He's like, "Listen, I'm ready. I figured something out. I'm going to go out and rake, and whatever happens is meant to be." And you look at his year that year, I think he spent like 15 games in AAA, went up to Detroit, just absolutely mashed, and never, ever looked back.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important story for him to tell. I've never really heard it on, any platform or seen it in any interviews. But no matter where you are in life, or if you're an athlete, there are times where you're going to get just dealt crushing blows. And let me tell you something, I've been released, I've been sent down. Those crush your spirit.
Yeah.
And to know how he navigated that, and then was able to, be an all-star, sign for $100 million. Like, I think there's some value in letting people, know his story.
And now he's a World Series champion too with the Red Sox.
World Series champ, man. I remember texting him after they won. I'm like, "Dude, you have literally earned everything, that you have accomplished in baseball. You should be very proud of it right now."
Wow. Yeah. So if you speaking of this off season is gonna be a crazy one, because they're close to reaching the deadline with the collective bargain agreement. It can potentially be a lockout, but do you think they can agree to it before December 1st? And what are your thoughts on some of these free agents like Carlos Correa and all?
So on the collective bargaining agreement, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to get an agreement hammered out before the deadline. Anytime you have a negotiation that involves hundreds of players and billions of dollars and egos and lawyers on both sides, right? That's just difficult in any world, let alone sports, right? Do I think there's going to be like a work stoppage during the season? No, but I would be very surprised if they get the agreement, hammered out by December 1st. The free agent market this year is really deep. A lot of talent, a lot of young shortstops. Obviously, you got some high-end, quality starting pitching. From a player side, I hope Carlos Correa and those guys break the bank. From a team side, I think if you look long-term at the $300 million commitments, they don't work out that much.
Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of a Max Scherzer or, even like a Manny at the end of his career with Boston, it got a little tough there. You look at A-Rod went through his situation, right? But even those guys provided tremendous value, but it was still so much money. I don't know if I'm an organization, if I'm ready to commit, $300 million. Not saying that Carlos isn't great. I hope he gets $400 million. But I don't know if I was running that team, if I'd be able to commit so many years and so many dollars. I'd rather give him $40 million a year for 6 years than $300 million a year for 10 years, or $30 million a year for 10 years.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting free agency this year. It's being a crazy one too, and I can't wait. And like I said, I'm a big Yankee fan. It's a big offseason for them. They're trying to make big moves. But for you, I got to take it back to your playing career. I want to ask you about Derek Jeter. Obviously, you got to play against him, and this picture of you on second base talking to him. So what was it like playing against Derek Jeter in Yankee Stadium, and what were some of the conversations you guys had on second base?
It was amazing playing at Yankee Stadium. So during pregame, the first day, right, they're not hitting on the field. Derek Jeter's taking like personal batting practice, all this stuff. And as we walk by, he's coming out and he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" Right? Like I was in uniform, super cool. And then as we're getting ready for the game, he says, "Hey, what's up, Trevor?" Obviously, Derek Jeter has no idea what my name is.
Yeah.
But what I thought was so cool is he literally must have seen on the lineup or whatever, Trevor Crowe, and he took the time to come and say hello,
Wow.
like as we cross paths in center field. To me, that's something like I'll always remember. He probably doesn't even remember it. He probably has done it with 10,000 guys, but he knew his place as a superstar, and I'm sure he knew that other big league guys looked up to him. That was a really, really cool moment.
And what's it like seeing him being an owner for the Miami Marlins?
Awesome. I mean, he's in his rightful position, right? Made a ton of money, obviously has the championship pedigree. He's a huge face of baseball. I mean, having him own a team only seems like that's how it should be in professional baseball.
Yeah, so obviously I want to ask you about some NFL, and obviously you're connected with Travis Kelce, and I'm a big Cowboy fan, and we're playing the Chiefs tomorrow. So big game against Travis Kelce. And when was the first time that you connected with them? And obviously connected with him, and obviously you have other friends that play in the NFL also.
So when I was in Cleveland, I met a guy named Joe Orbeck. He's a partner in a bunch of bars and restaurants out there. And in 2011, I had shoulder surgery. Me and Joe became very close friends. We still are to this day. Being in the bar and restaurant scene, Joe met a lot of athletes. Travis was one of them. And when I was, finishing up my playing career, me and Joe went to go watch the national championship in Dallas when Oregon played Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Travis was there. We met. We hit it off. We spent a lot of time together. I've been out to Kansas City, stayed at his house. Went to a Chiefs game. He's seen me down when I was in Florida. Really good guy. Like, he's another guy. It's like crazy. Great human being, right? But you don't know when somebody becomes a superstar, like how they're going to react, how they're going to treat people. He's now like bona fide, one of the best tight ends in the NFL, making millions of dollars, all pro. He's the same human being he was that I met him when he was hurt, not playing during his rookie year. So really cool to see his progression and stuff too. The Cowboys Chiefs game is going to be very interesting. Yeah. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So so the last two things here before I let you go, our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George, and we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe. So I'll send, and the kids stay safe. So I'll send you the foundation so you can go check it out.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
And the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers?
Yeah, obviously, like our country's going through a crazy time right now, like political issues. We got COVID going on. Like it's an insane time in America right now. Frontline workers, firefighters, police officers, anybody involved in the medical staff, like, thank you so much. And my one hope is like we could just be like a little bit more empathetic to what everyone's going through on both sides, right? Everyone has an opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I just wish we could have a little bit more empathy on both sides.
Yeah, well said. And that wraps up episode 939 with former MLB outfielder Trevor Crowe. He played for Cleveland Indians, Houston Astros, and also he's a Olympic gold medalist. I just want to say thank you for joining the show. Hopefully podcaster soon to be. But but thank you again for coming to the show. It's truly an honor. And like I said, we would like to have you back as a returning guest at some point down the line so you can meet the full team. But keep up the great work. And if you guys need help with anything with your podcast, let us know. And this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.